How much money are you going to make when you sell your house? If you're thinking about selling your house, you're probably wondering the answer to that question. And it's obviously a combination of how much you sell it for and how much you owe and how much your closing costs are. So I'm going to get into all that in this video and more. We're going to nerd out on some spreadsheets. We're going to show you how to value your house. We're going to show you how to do the calculation to figure out what you're going to get if you sell your house at different prices in this market. And I'm even going to give you some tips on where to price the house. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, it's Rob here from VRA Realty Alliance LLC. So the first thing I'm going to go over is seller closing costs. And I know that a lot of people wonder, what are the basic closing costs for a seller? So there's two big ones in Pennsylvania. One's going to be transfer tax, and the other's going to be realtor fees, which I get. So realtors will charge a commission, and usually part of it will go to the buyer's side commission and part of it will go to the seller's side. So the buyer's side commission and the seller's side commission are paid by the seller. So let's just say for this example that we're using 6%, which is typically what I charge, plus a $4.95 broker fee, which covers transactional fees. So that's about what I charge personally. It can vary, it's negotiable. Some people will do it for very cheap, but it's like anything else, you can hire a cheap lawyer, you can hire an expensive attorney. So, results may vary based on the quality of your realtor, and not saying that someone charges more is better or worse, but just something to think about. So you've got that. Then you've got transfer tax. So in Pennsylvania, usually transfer tax is split between the buyer and seller, and it's usually 2%. Now in Philadelphia, it can be more. In Coatesville, it can be more. There's some other little places that it can be more. So it's important to check. But usually that goes 1% to the seller and 1% to the buyer. So right now we're a little bit over 7% in closing costs. And there's going to be some other additional fees like conveyancing, which they do all the docs and things like that, some recording fees. And then there may be some credits or debits for maybe if you owe some water bills, any liens, any mortgages, anything else you have against the house is going to subtract from that total. The other thing to think about is if you've paid your school taxes for the year, you may be getting a prorated credit back. So that could also offset some of the other costs. Rule of thumb, about 8% of the purchase price of the house. The other thing you want to think about is what you owe on your mortgage. So you can go to your mortgage balance and say, okay, hey, I owe X amount. That's actually not likely going to be your mortgage payoff when you go to sell. There's going to be some interest charges tacked onto that. You should also get a refund from your escrow account that's held there. So if you have money being held there, the mortgage company should refund that back. So there's going to be like a calculation that they do to give you your final payoff amount. So you can order a final payoff amount from your mortgage company to get that information. I don't believe it costs anything. Usually it takes them a few days to a few weeks to get that to you, but they can say, okay, if I sold it by X date, what's your mortgage payoff amount? So that's another important thing to think about. And if you've got a HELOC or a second mortgage against your house, or you owe taxes or anything like that, that's all going to come out at the closing table out of your proceeds. So it's important to think about. Let's run through an example using a handy dandy spreadsheet that I made. If you want this spreadsheet, I'm happy to share it with you. Just shoot me an email. My information is in the description. And by the way, feel free to reach out to me with any questions you might have about selling your house in Pennsylvania. I've done over 100 deals and I'm happy to help you understand what your costs are going to be, how much you could sell it for, whatever it is you need. I'm here for you. So don't be a stranger. Feel free to reach out to me. All right. Let's get into an example. Okay, so first I'm going to take you through a spreadsheet that's going to just show you example calculations, so a predictive calculation to try to understand, about where your proceeds are going to fall. And then I'm going to show you an actual seller's closing cost sheet so you can see a real example, and I'll take you through all the line items. Going to be exciting. All right, so when you're looking at here, I've got sales price on this line, and these are possible sales prices for the home. And again, we'll go through a little bit later on how to calculate where we think it's going to sell. Then we've got transfer tax at 1%, which is, like I said, standard in a lot of Pennsylvania, though not always, so you have to check. So I'm multiplying this by 0.01. And then you've got commissions here, which I have 6% plus $4.95 in. And again, those are negotiable potentially. So, there's no fixed commission rates. We've got conveyancing at about $250. There may be other fees in there like transaction management, things like that. They got recording of deeds and that kind of thing. You may have an HOA, and that HOA may require a capital contribution. You may end up paying some credits to the buyer, like if you have an inspection that comes back bad or something like that, and you credit them $5,000 or something along those lines. There may be a credit here as well. And then we've got the proceeds to the seller prior to the mortgage balance, right? So, okay, if you're 365, now you're at 338, you're at 375, you're at 347. And then here's your mortgage balance. So again, that's where you get that mortgage payoff from your mortgage company, and okay, this is what we're gonna owe at closing to the mortgage. And then this is the final calculation here, which is your proceeds before mortgage minus the mortgage and what you're going to clear. So again, if you want this spreadsheet for yourself, I'm happy to give it to you. Again, it's not like a total everything possible. I talked about the credit for the taxes paid, by the way, also in here. So if you've got, prorated taxes, you look at your taxes and how many months you have left until you have to pay them again, and you can put that in. Anyway, this gives you a rough idea of what you're going to clear when you sell, and gives you some different options if you sell at different prices, which I think is important to think about because, hey, you don't know exactly where a house is going to sell. Even an expert can't predict it 100% of the time. So anyway, if you want the spreadsheet, hit me up in the comments and I can give it to you. All right, so let's move into a actual closing sheet. Okay, so here's a real life closing cost sheet. We have a house that sold for $515,000. And we're seeing the credits. So right here, there's going to be seller debit and seller credit. So debit means minus, credit means plus. So they're getting $515,000 for the house. And then you've got your school taxes, which are getting refunded at a prorated rate. So you can see that from August 19th to January 1st, they're getting that time period of their school taxes back as a credit. So keep going down. A lot of stuff's on the other side, so you can see it. There's a wire transfer fee for $70. Here you can see the commissions, which are 3%, 3%. So one's coming to the buyer side and one's going to the seller side, and so that's 3% plus $495, and then 3% to the buyer side. And you can see those are going to different real estate companies. There's a transfer tax here, which again is 1% of the purchase price. And then there's the payoff of the mortgage. So there's only $20,000 owed on this house. And then you've got the debits for the conveyancing fees, the sewer certs. So these are like different things. They owed their HOA $350 when they sold. There was some property taxes they owed and a duplicate tax bill charge. So at the end of the day, their balance due to them was $457,000 after all taxes, fees, mortgages, and everything else. So $515 to $457. The seller's costs on the closing side is usually pretty simple relative to the buyer who's got a lot of different other things. Let's talk about pricing the house. So when you're thinking about pricing your house, the market has shifted a little bit. Right now it's July 19th, 2022. So in the market right now, this can change all the time, but the interest rates have gone up, and that has shifted the market a little bit from a really strong seller's market to a little bit more of a buyer's market. In the seller's market, the sellers have the power. In a buyer's market, the buyers have the power. So we're seeing the balance of power shift back towards the buyers. So what this means is where you price your house is really important. And my suggestion is to price your house a little bit under market price, because you don't want to overprice your house now and then have it sit for a long period of time. That's really important. When you think about how to price your house, you want to think about what similar houses have been selling for in your neighborhood. They're going to look at a couple basic things, but number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, amount of square footage, overall condition, location can matter if you're on a busy street or not, and then they're going to look at your lot. So like if you have a nice backyard and a big acreage, that can come into play as well. So those are the main basic factors in pricing your house. Look at what's sold recently around you using Zillow, Realtor.com, and get an understanding. Now, I obviously do this for my clients, and there is a little bit of experience that goes into it. There's a little bit of, I guess, magic that comes into pricing a house and feeling out where it should price out. So what I'm effectively doing is appraising the house before it sells, and that way I know the market value of the house. Knowing the market value of the house is important because when a buyer buys the house, they're going to have an appraiser come in and they're going to determine the market value of the house. So if you know that you're selling way above your market value based on where it's going to appraise, you better make sure you've got an appraisal guarantee in place to cover that gap, or else that offer is not going to hold up. So it's really important to understand exactly where you sit. Now, market price and sales price can definitely be different things, especially in the past 2 years because of the accelerated appreciation in the market. Now that is slowing down a little bit, but you know, it's still there, especially if a house is in good condition. And that really comes down to getting people excited about buying your house. And that has to do with pricing it properly. So if you know the market price and you're pricing it at or slightly below that, and you've also really well presented that property, and then you've also really well marketed that property, and I think that comes down to having great pictures, great video, and then running social media advertising. I just did one in Thorndale over, towards Downingtown, Coatesville area. And we got over 50,000 views on that property on Facebook, which was way more than Zillow got. So you can get a ton of views and a ton of eyes on a property if you properly market it. You should usually do a coming soon period prior to selling the house, because that gives you some time to market the property, let people know it's coming before it hits the market. Now the thing with the coming soon period is that only people in the MLS or like that have a realtor can see that. So again, the social media marketing really comes into play when you're doing a coming soon period. And you can also advertise at the open house events. You should be holding open houses. I think that that's always a good idea to do, especially opening weekend. I tend to have a house launch on Thursday, open house Sunday, try to review offers Monday, Tuesday. Now, even in this market that's cooling off a bit, I think if you price it properly and market it properly, you still could have that happen. It doesn't always work out. There's not always a perfect solution for everything, but you should always at least be trying your best, and your realtor should be trying their best as well. One of my tips is to make sure you get a cleaning done or a deep clean done on the house, and definitely touch up paint. Those are two relatively low cost things that can really make a big difference in the presentation of the property. If you got a ton of clutter throughout, obviously that's something to get rid of too. You don't want stuff everywhere, personal pictures, that kind of thing. So you want to kind of keep it clean, uncluttered, and looking like you keep up with it. If you do all those things, then you might actually be able to get above the market price for the house. And that's why good realtors can get paid more, because they properly market the property. In addition, there's conversations and negotiations that go on behind the scenes that can also really impact how much you get for the property. And also you need to understand what a good offer is, because sometimes just a high price isn't everything. I know I threw a lot at you guys, but I'm sure you're absorbing all of it. And if not, I'm here for you. Feel free to contact me, ask questions. If you want to see a video on me valuing houses and doing that in detail, I'm happy to do that with you. Just let me know in the comments down below. Talk to you guys soon.